Hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? NFL Week 13, nearly over. What a ride. Nobody on bye this week, so a lot of stuff going on. A lot of teams playing football. Didn't necessarily think it was all good football, but it was something. We got 3 games on Thanksgiving. We had the absolute nightmare of a game from the Eagles on Friday. We had a pretty disgusting slate of games on Sunday, if we're being honest. And we do get to close out tonight with Drake May playing football. So I guess that's something. I see Austin and Chris are here. Max was first. A lot of members here ready to go. Max Brosmer with a truly unforgettable NFL debut, I guess I'll say. Crazy to think it really could get worse than JJ McCarthy. So I guess he'll be back in our lives soon. Not a fantasy football take, but I feel like my biggest take after week 13 is like, are there any good teams in the NFL this year? Like, I don't think I've ever seen a season with this much parity. Like, there isn't a single team. I think the Rams are the closest that is like obviously a strong Super Bowl contender. Like, doesn't it feel like the Bears are the 1 seed right now? Like, how does that even make any sense? I feel like usually by this time of the season, we at least have a couple of teams that have pulled away from the pack. They're like, these are the best teams. So it's like, where are the best teams? The Broncos are made of paper mache, in my opinion. Like, they have barely won almost all of their games. It doesn't matter who they're playing. If it's the Jets, they'll win by 2. If it's the Commanders, they'll win by 1. Like, they don't feel legit to me. Not with Bo Nix and pretty lackluster cast of weapons. And then we see the Rams, who I thought were kind of the most unstoppable team. They just lose to the Panthers. It's just so bizarre to me. I've been trying to do these playoff best ball drafts on Underdog. I'm like obsessed with them. It's one of my favorite formats, and I don't even know who to draft right now. I genuinely don't know who is a Super Bowl contender. So it's really bizarre. The Bears being the 1 seed right now is shocking. I don't know if it's going to hold, but they've obviously gotten a lot. They've gotten a lot better as of late, and they ran all over the Eagles. It was pathetic. All right, guys. Anyway, let's move along here. Max, I don't have any cope for you with the Vikings. I don't know if it's going to be okay. I think you're going to have to get comfortable with Mac Jones as your week 1 starting quarterback next year. That's about all I can say. I don't have a better option for you as it stands right now. Samuel, Oronde Gadsden is not dead. We're going to talk about him in the fallers section, but I'm a lot more optimistic about him than anything else. So no, I don't think he's dead. I need Trey Henderson to score 100 points tonight or I'm knocked out of the playoffs. I'd give you about 50-50 on that. So, don't go to bed early because it could happen. But yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, any Bears fans in the chat, I'm not trying to like trash on your team. It's weird to me that they're 9-3. Like, they just don't look like a 9-3 team to me on paper. I feel like Caleb Williams hasn't played, that well. It's weird, man. This year, anybody can win any game at any time, unless you're the Saints or the Raiders or the Titans, pretty much. All right. See, Kyler Murray to the Vikings, that might be slightly better overall for the Vikings, although I'm not totally sure. But I know that Mac Jones is going to be better for Justin Jefferson than Kyler Murray would be, and that's really all I care about. So I'm rooting for Mac Jones, or like Daniel Jones somehow doesn't go back to the Colts. But yeah, I wouldn't love Kyler to the Vikings, I don't think. All right. So we're going to have the data drop today. We're going to talk about some interesting numbers. We're going to do risers and fallers. I've got the any second list back today. We'll do that before risers and fallers. Hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. I think we talked about it on Friday. We talked about Thanksgiving because I did the live startup mock draft. If you didn't see that, that was pretty fun. We did a live startup mock draft, totally focused on 2026. Wasn't able to get a usual video out this week, so just wanted to do the live stream. We will have a real video out this week on Thursday. I promise. We'll go do some buys and sells for those of you that are still able to make trades in your leagues. For those of you that can't, just come along for the ride. Just have some fun. The content is, it's comfortable, something to watch, something to listen to. As we get into the end of the season, maybe we'll talk about more rankings, off-season strategy, that stuff. Try to keep it actionable, but you guys know I'm here. I'm here every week. Something in Dynasty always going on, something to talk about at all times. And I know you guys are deep enough sickos that you'll be here to talk about it with me. All right. Thanks, Luke. You too. All right. Let's get into today's data drop. These are some stats from some of my favorite accounts on X, on Twitter, that just kind of aggregate the most interesting information from the games, get it out there quickly in a very consumable way, kind of contextualize what we saw on the screen. It's very helpful for me. So I like to go and look at these certain accounts, see what they've posted. JJ Zacharias and Ryan Heath. Datarama has been one of my favorites. Before we jump into that, if you're watching this stream, whether it's the replay, whether you're watching live, if you could hit the like button down below. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and get subscribed. We've got real actionable Dynasty videos coming out every week. I do this recap every week. I think you'll get your money's worth out of this subscription because, it's free. All right. First slide here on the data drop is all about the Miami Dolphins and specifically Devon Achane. This was an interesting call out from my friend Ryan Heath. I didn't realize this. Tua Tagovailoa has only exceeded 26 pass attempts once since week 7. He attempted just 23 today. Since that point, the Dolphins rank bottom 3 in pass rate over expectation. And Devon Achane is averaging 107.3 rushing yards per game and 21.8 fantasy points per game in that stretch. And the Dolphins are 4-2 since they shifted to being very run heavy. This is interesting to me. I guess I hadn't noticed the huge philosophical shift for the Dolphins, but I guess Mike McDaniel realized maybe it was around the time that Tua threw 4 picks in a game that you can't put this thing on Tua's shoulders, especially without Tyreek Hill, and expect it to go well. And Devon Achane has been fantastic. They have found a way to run the ball efficiently with him, despite maybe not having the greatest offensive line. So it's been pretty interesting. I kind of got, what's the word? It kind of broke my brain when I was looking at the NFL playoff calculator or whatever and saw that the Dolphins have only lost one more game than the Chiefs, or the Chiefs have only won one more game than the Dolphins this year. It really doesn't feel that way based on how we talk about these teams. But Mike McDaniel is going to come back next year. He's safe. He's managed to rally this team to a 4-2 record. And that's really important, specifically for Devon Achane, because as awesome of a player as he is, I feel much more comfortable about him as a dynasty asset with Mike McDaniel, calling the shots, pulling the levers. So that's big. And I wanted to pair that with this stat at the bottom here from Datarama that Devon Achane leads the NFL in 10-plus yard run rate 17.2%, and 15-yard run rate at 9.7%. The 10-plus yard run rate is a 12.8% increase in efficiency on the next closest running back, and the 15-yard rate is a 16% increase. All this to say, Achane has been the most explosive rusher in the NFL this year, just like we saw with him in his rookie season. So whatever was going on last year, it seems like it was an offense-wide efficiency problem, mostly I think stemming from the offensive line, where we saw Hill have his career worst, Waddle have his career worst, Achane had a down year. It's not that he can't handle the workload. He's handling the workload now, and we're seeing how incredible he is. So he's been, he's not necessarily a riser based just on this week, but I have moved him to my Dynasty RB4, and I'm becoming increasingly comfortable with him as a long-term Dynasty asset because he's gotten so much better as a rusher. And again, because we have more certainty that Mike McDaniel's going to be back. So I liked that data there from those two. And then the other slide we have here, about two wide receivers that are both getting a lot of targets, one of which is putting up a lot of fantasy points. The other one is not. So we have Emeka Egbuka here. Since week 7 is the wide receiver 7 in expected fantasy points per game, 17.8. He's the wide receiver 34 in actual points per game. Just 30 of his 58 targets have been deemed catchable in this time, according to the Fantasy Points data suite. For context, 36 of his 42 targets were catchable in weeks 1 through 6. So for anyone that's not familiar, expected points basically takes your targets, the depth of the target, the position on the field, whether it's in the end zone, in the red zone, etc., and I guess just assigns a value to that target based on whatever kind of formula they're using from what we've seen historically. The usage for Egbuka is phenomenal. He is demanding targets. Another stat from JJ Zachariason, he has a 29% target share per game rate since week 5. He had a 32% target share this week. It's genuinely just been that Baker is missing him for the most part. I think he had a drop in this game, but it's mostly just Baker missing him. He, like this tweet says, 51.7% catchable targets. I actually pulled this up on the data suite. Since week 6, if you look at all wide receivers that have gotten a reasonable number of targets, like 15 or more targets, he is literally dead last out of 60 receivers in catchable target rate. So all that to say, Egbuka is still incredible. He looks awesome. Matt Harmon raved about him in his reception perception midseason rookie report. The eye test, the target earning, it's all there. It's just not efficient right now. I'm heavily betting on that correcting. So if he is being discounted in your league because of this, I would go out and aggressively look to acquire him, especially on a rebuilding team. I don't know how much better the efficiency gets rest of season, but I would definitely be looking to get him. He's my wide receiver 11 in Dynasty and my 24th overall player right now. So, borderline second round startup pick for me, in the same range of value for me as Devon Achane, Tyler Warren, Jackson Dart, Drake London. I think he's very, very good. So just want to throw that out there. And then the last guy is Rashee Rice in this data drop. I'll come back and answer some of your questions here after this last one. Rashee Rice, despite missing the first 6 games of the season, is now 5th among wide receivers in red zone targets and 4th in designed targets. He easily leads the league in both of these categories on a per game basis. Rashee Rice is a very unique wide receiver in the sense that he doesn't, like when you compare him to other top wide receivers, he's not running the same types of routes. He runs many more routes that are close to the line of scrimmage. He's very much a yards after catch guy. It's like all the concerns that people had about Amon-Ra St. Brown early in his career, but like cranked up a degree, which is why, despite the points, it can be hard to push him up into that range just because I don't think he's as talented, as versatile as those other players, which I don't think is a hot take. But he's also kind of an extension of the run game with how he's used, with so many design targets, with so many manufactured touches in the red zone. And so you should expect him to score more touchdowns than the average, high volume wide receiver, because he's genuinely just featured in that area Not quite to the degree of Devontae Adams, but same type of idea, right? So you should expect Rashee Rice to continue to ball out rest of season, I guess, is really the only point I'm making here. Back a little bit to this question from, I don't know if the names are just not loading or if it's actually user NX1G, whatever that is. That's a very interesting username. Any chance Saquon bounces back next year with a massive season? I'm starting to think buying him with a 26 playoff first might be a bargain. So where I have Saquon ranked, I would definitely still be willing to pay a playoff first. I have him at the bottom of my base first tier. So just above my late first tier and closer to, like a mid first than a late first. I still think Saquon Barkley is awesome. He might not quite be the same as he was the year before, but honestly, I don't even know because he doesn't have any room. I watch every snap of the Eagles. The guy has no space. When you get him the ball in space, he still does really cool stuff. The offensive line and the blocking just in general has been so bad. I don't see how it can stay this bad. So I'd be willing to bet on this team figuring it out at least by next season. And Barkley is good enough where he'll be 29 next year. I still think he's good enough where I'd be comfortable paying that price. And then Samuel asks Gibbs, Bijan, and who? I think that was in regards to Devon Achane as my Dynasty RB4. I still have Ashton Genty ahead of him at RB3. Everything I've seen from Ashton Genty is, I think he looks fantastic. And the stats, the advanced stats back it up. Like I think he's third in missed tackles forced. Every time he gets the ball in space, he runs somebody over or he avoids a tackle. He never goes down, the first touch. He just gets hit in the backfield so often that I think people have started to question whether he's actually that good. Ashton Genty, top 10 pick in the draft. He turns 22 tomorrow. So insanely young guy. And his situation literally can only get better. He's getting like 90% of the snaps, all the opportunities. He had a 36% target share. He's had 8 targets in 3 straight games. Like, this guy is going to be the focal point of the Raiders offense for years to come. And the offense cannot be any worse than it is right now. So he's averaging 15 points per game as a 21-year-old rookie in the worst offense I've ever seen in my life. There's just so much room for this to improve. And he has so much insulation because he's so young, so talented, such high draft capital. So I'm a big believer in Genty, and I would be buying, not selling Genty as my RB3. Do you think Hampton will be reliable in the fantasy playoffs? I don't know. I mean, we get at least 1 week. I think he's supposed to play in week 14. The Eagles' run defense might make him look pretty good. I don't know what the split's going to look like with Vidal, given the fact that he's coming off of a fractured ankle. I think long term, I'm not concerned about him being in like a true timeshare, but I don't know how quickly they're going to ramp him back up to heavy volume, and it's possible they just don't the rest of the season because they don't need to. So I think he's probably like a mid RB2 by the time we get to week 15, 16, 17, but we have to see him in a game and how they intend to use him. I don't really have a great feel for it. All right. That's the data drop. Let's move on here to the any second round pick list. For those of you that have missed it before or you're not familiar with this segment, I'm going to show you a list of players. And on this list represents players that I would sell for any second round pick in Dynasty. Now, I'm always coming at this from a super flex standpoint. In one quarterback league, the value of a second round pick is a little bit different because you typically have fewer players up top pushing talented guys down. So take it with a grain of salt in a one quarterback league. But in super flex, I'm comfortable taking any second, whether that is a late 26 second, whether that is a 27 or 28, random future second out far ahead. And the idea here is we're trying to churn your roster, turn replaceable players into draft picks that are flexible, that give you a chance at upside. And over time, maybe you don't win every single one of these transactions, but over time, you are making smart moves that get rid of players before they lose value, give you insulated assets that gain value, and give you more opportunity to make trades. Last time we did this, it wasn't actually last week, but the last time we did this, I had Michael Wilson on the list. He did end up having another big game afterward, but with Marvin Harrison back, he was kind of, back down to earth a little bit this week. Tyrone Tracy and Deebo Samuel. Those were the ones from, I guess, week 11 or week 10. So that was last time. This week's list, different mixture of names here. The first one maybe is controversial. I don't really know. I think there's a very wide range of opinions here on Shedeur Sanders. My take is that he gets like 4 more games on one of the worst offenses in the NFL to make an impression. Outside of a couple of plays, I haven't seen a ton that makes me think this guy is more, significantly more than your average 5th round pick rookie quarterback. Other people have a lot more conviction in him. If that's you, fair enough. I just think more often than not, trading him for a 2nd round pick is going to get you access to a more interesting and a more useful asset down the road. I don't believe that Shedeur Sanders will be the week 1 starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns in 2026. That's just as simple as it is. Nice touchdown pass to Harold Fannin in the last game. Hard to judge him in general with bad weather. But again, just logistically speaking, he has a short time to prove himself. We have a very long track record of these late drafted quarterbacks, whether or not you think it's the same type of situation. Late drafted quarterbacks, they don't get a long leash. There was a moment in time where people thought, Sam Howell was going to be the long-term answer for the Washington Commanders, and then haven't heard from him since. People were trading 1st round picks for him. So if I have Shedeur Sanders, I'd trade him for any second. DJ Moore, I think it's time. I've seen enough. He is losing opportunities now to Luther Burden, Colson Loveland. This most recent game, he had 4 targets on 82% of the routes. He turned 4 targets into like 2 catches for 17 yards. He's had very few usable fantasy weeks. At this point, it's literally just hanging your hat on what he's done in the past. There's nothing about his production this year that would be worth more than a 2nd round pick. I'd rather just re-roll. He's what is he now? He's 28 years old. He'll be 29 for next season. And more important than the age, he just doesn't look like he can win on a lot of routes anymore. Like, most of his success has been on manufactured touches. I think the team is quickly realizing Luther Burden is more explosive, more impressive with the ball in his hands on those manufactured touches. That just doesn't leave much for more to do. Now, I think he'll be on a new team next year, but what is the upside scenario? I'm not sure. I don't know how well he can actually succeed as a regular wide receiver at this point. It feels kind of Deebo Samuel-esque where, maybe he can get back into wide receiver 2 range if he lands on a team that wants to just force him the ball over and over again. Seems less likely than not. And then the last guy here, Brenton Strange, came back from injury. He had himself, a solid game. 15% target share, caught a few passes, caught a touchdown. It seems like there are some people that are really in on Brenton Strange, and you can paint a picture that he was a 2nd round pick. He has kind of consistently improved throughout his career. Brian Thomas seems to be fading. There's an opportunity here for him to contribute. I just don't ever see him getting beyond the sort of replaceable tier of tight ends that we see just end up being a big blob in the rankings. And because there are so many different tight ends available, you look at Hunter Henry, Juwan Johnson, Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, there's so many different tight ends, Zach Ertz, that just hang around in that range of scoring. Even Dalton Schultz, he's having a few, he's had a few great games. If you can't truly separate yourself from that range of scorers, you just don't hold a lot of value because nobody really wants to trade for that player, at a high price. So it's just expressing kind of a lack of belief in the upside here for Strange. Certainly a floor guy that you can start, especially in tight end premium, but I would not mind cashing out if somebody's like, I really need a tight end, guys. I need a tight end this week. You can sell Strange on, he's a young player, probably going to get 5 or 6 targets a game the rest of the season. Traded Rice, Darnold, and a second for Brock Bowers and a 27 first. Yeah, good move there. I think you're gonna want to be adding 27 firsts. I don't think that's like a robbery or anything, but I do still have Bowers ahead of Rice, and I would take a 27 first in most cases over Darnold and a second. Darnold's been totally fine. Nothing wrong with Darnold, but the 27 first, like that's just such a high upside asset. So, all right, that's the any second list. Let's get into risers and fallers here. Moving right along. Risers, largely going to be players that are coming off of good games, but I'm going to try my best to contextualize the risers and especially the fallers. Don't just look at the list and think this is a buys and sells list. This is not a buys and sells. Sometimes a player is a riser, but I'm still wary of their future outlook. Sometimes a player is a faller, and I'm saying, hey, I want to buy the dip on this player. I want to get in while they are down. So don't just look at it as a buys and sells. Don't look at this as players you want, players you don't want. Try to, if you can, listen in for the context on each of these guys. At the top, it's pretty simple. It's Joe Burrow. He came back and looked awesome, looked very healthy in his first game action from the foot injury, toe injury. I honestly, like way back at the beginning of the year, didn't even realize that he could come back or that it was like realistic for him to come back outside of a playoff run. So for him to be back already by Thanksgiving, it's awesome for Chase and Higgins, obviously. It's awesome for people that held Joe Burrow. And, he's right back to being in that top 5-ish mix for quarterbacks. I've always been a little bit lower on him just because he's so touchdown rate dependent. He doesn't rush at all. But I have him as my QB7 in Dynasty, top 20 asset. So that's a big win. Some people were able to get him pretty cheap. He's still Joe Burrow, so that's good. We don't need to spend long on him. Bucky Irving also made his return from a fairly long injury absence. And despite the fact that they said they were going to ease him in, they were going to try to ride the hot hand, his hands must have been pretty hot because he took on a majority of the touches. He had an 81% running back rush share. If you want to know how this panned out, Rachaad White got the first carry of the game, and then Bucky basically took everything outside of the 2-minute drill. Sean Tucker mixed in for 2 carries randomly on drives. He actually had the first one of the second half, but Bucky Irving had 81% of the carries. He also added 2 receptions. He got a touchdown. He actually had, I think, another touchdown that got called back in the game for a hold. So Bucky Irving is back. He immediately, was the best running back. I remember people saying, look how good Sean Tucker is. There's going to be a split here. It's not going to be the same type of workload he had before. The talent's winning out here. Bucky Irving is incredible. He came back. He got the work again. Hopefully we see some more receiving work as he gets more comfortable, more healthy. But, fire him up with confidence. I've always been very high on Bucky. I have him currently my running back 8 in Dynasty, just behind guys like Henderson, Jonathan Taylor. So, yeah, that was really great to see. It was great for some of my teams specifically. We have A.J. Brown next. And despite the Eagles' recent struggles, it's been great for A.J. Brown lately. I don't know. Correlation versus causation there. I don't know. J.J. Zacharyson points out that A.J. Brown is averaging 20.7 points per game over his last 5 contests. That would pretty easily be like a top 5 or 6 number for the whole season. So, in other words, top 5 type wide receiver production over the last 5 games. Since week 1, he has had a 31% target share per game rate. The issue is that he had some games where the targets were really inefficient and the overall number of pass attempts is fairly low because we do still try to run the ball most weeks, even though it goes very poorly. But 31% target share, 20 points per game, that is the A.J. Brown you were signing up for in the third round of startups. I don't think he's that player anymore. To me, he just doesn't look quite that dominant. He doesn't look like he has quite that extra gear of, explosiveness, ability to blow past defenders. He's winning a lot on these shorter routes towards the sidelines. He's still a very good receiver. I just don't want to go overboard and say like, oh yeah, he's totally back. Like he's 100% back. I don't think he's 100% back. And I don't think he's going to score 20 points per game the rest of the season. But this is very encouraging if you've been holding him because you just felt like you couldn't trade him. And he's obviously a guy you want to be starting now. And they're on a playoff push. They need to keep finding answers, keep finding ways to get him involved. So good stuff for A.J. Brown. Ian Hartitz also pointed out, ever since that quote where A.J. Brown said, if you have me in fantasy, trade me, he has been the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points for wide receivers. So pretty funny and ironic. Parker, I could have put Jacoby Myers on here for sure. I think he kind of is what he is, though. Like, Jacoby Myers has always been a quality wide receiver. He's capable of soaking up targets when no one else is willing to, right? He'll flourish. Parker Washington goes out in the second quarter of this game. So Jacoby Myers kind of absorbs a lot of that work while Brian Thomas does his usual nothing. So it's like, I'm not really like Jacoby Myers. He's a 29-year-old wide receiver who always hovers between like a 22 and 24% target share, no matter where he is, whatever he's doing. I'm not really moving him up, but he had a great game. He's still like a, flex worthy or wide receiver 3 guy you can play rest of the season. The next riser is RJ Harvey. Some good, some bad from this game. Coming out of the bye week, we did see, I'd say, a little bit more of growth in his role. Or I guess it's hard to say growth in his role. He had 13 carries. It felt like while the game was, like there were some carries late in the game that went to, I believe, Jaleel McLaughlin. But it felt like in the normal flow of the game, he was very involved. I guess looking back at the snaps and the routes, he wasn't really that much more involved than his first game without Dobbins. He only ends up at 47% of the snaps, 29% of the routes, but he had 17 plus expected points. He did get the 2 goal line touchdowns, and there was some positive coach speak about Harvey as the goal line back. So I think that is intentional and encouraging. He had 4 targets. He had 13 out of, I want to say 20 total running back carries. So he's not a workhorse. Overall, a guy you can start as an RB2, and you're hoping that he can continue to improve and he can continue to do more. Not someone we're going to go crazy about, but, positive signals. Terry McLaurin, also in that Sunday Night Football game, had a pretty insane performance when you look at all of the different factors together. He only ran 58% of the routes because, first game back from injury. On his 58% of routes, he got 14 targets, which was good for a 28% target share and a 44% targets per route run. He had 3 yards per route run. He ended up with 7 for 96 and a touchdown, but he actually had 36 expected fantasy points in this game. He led all wide receivers in expected points by over 10. So he had insane usage in this game. I don't obviously think that's like a normal thing we should expect, but it's good to see some signs of life from Terry McLaurin, who's kind of had a lost season. Not that there's necessarily a buy window open right now, but if you had traded for him, hoping for him to come back and look good, then that's the sign that you wanted. Now, the problem is that he's 30 years old, and there's only a few games left in this season, and the next time we see him, he'll be 31 years old. But he won't be coming off of a long holdout contract negotiation, and so hopefully he won't suffer a significant injury early in the season. Kyle Monangai is also a riser. He has led the backfield in running back rushes over the last 2 weeks. Both he and Swift looked pretty fantastic against the Eagles. It was like a very pathetic run defense. in my opinion, but he's just very physical out there. I don't know how good he is. I know he's good at running into people and running through people, and that's been good enough, for what they need him to do. They use him a lot on the inside stuff. They use Swift more on the outside stuff, and it's been working really well. The good news for Monangai is that Ben Johnson has figured out this run scheme, and that's what he did in Detroit. That's what he's doing here. I don't know what the future holds for these guys, but I would rather have Monangai in Dynasty than Swift, just because he's a rookie. He was brought in by the Ben Johnson regime. And even though Swift is technically under contract for next year, I don't know it's a lock that he's back. Not that he would be gone and then Monangai would just be the back. I think this is clearly going to be a 2-back system. But he's an interesting player because he has that size to contribute at the goal line as well. The only thing with Monangai is he's not a pass catcher, so the ceiling is going to be limited. They're not going to have like 40 running back rushes every week. So the ceiling in general is a little bit limited if he's not going to catch passes, and he is going to be splitting in some capacity. If somebody was going to offer like an early second round pick, I would gladly cash out on the 7th round running back for that, but he's definitely doing what we hoped like JCM would do. So got to give him credit for that. Pat Bryant is another rookie that is on the rise. He actually I can't say out snapped. I didn't check snaps. He ran more routes than Troy Franklin, 5 more routes than Troy Franklin. He had a 77% route share. He had 7 targets to Franklin's 3. Troy Franklin had been the lead target for this team. I think he probably still is, like, overall. But in this particular game, for whatever reason, the game plan was get Pat Bryant on the field more, and he got 7 targets. He's a sneaky buy. He hasn't had, like, a huge fantasy game yet. So if you can go out and get him, I did move him up into the late 2nd tier. Not that I really want to be sending 2nd-round picks for him, but if you can get rid of some players that are fading, like I would gladly trade away Deebo Samuel for Pat Bryant. I would trade like Aaron Jones. I guess he's hurt now. Isaiah Pacheco. I'd rather have Pat Bryant than Keon Coleman personally. Jerry Jeudy. So there's probably ways to get him. I think he's an interesting target because Cortland Sutton, he's on the fallers list. Cortland Sutton is nearing the end, I think. A.D. Mitchell is a riser, year 2 wide receiver, who I didn't have a lot of hope for when he got traded to the Jets. I was like, whatever, failing wide receiver. I get it. They need a guy to throw into the trade. These are his target shares in 3 games as a Jet: 24%, 26%, 39%. Now, I know the Jets don't have any wide receivers. They're running out Alan Lazard and John Mechie and A.D. Mitchell and Mason Taylor. But he's the one getting the targets, not the other guys. John Mechie has been overall pretty far behind him in target share for the time that they've shared the field. Mason Taylor is not even close. These other guys aren't doing anything. Like, he's the one who is standing out. So he might be standing out among weak competition, but he is standing out. There are some bright points with his profile. Like, he got 2nd-round draft capital. He was somewhat productive in college, not like to the degree you'd like to see, but somewhat. He had some flashy plays, and he's been an incredible separator ever since he's been in the NFL. His biggest issue has been mental mistakes, drops. That's fixable. So if he has the raw talent and he's figuring it out now on a new team, he's a guy to watch. He's absolutely a riser. People are probably skeptical to buy into him, so it's not a bad idea to try to kick the tires. I wouldn't go trade 2nd-round picks for A.D. Mitchell personally, but 3rd-round picks, sure. Bench guys that you don't need, whatever. Older depreciating assets, why not? And then lastly, we have Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm, who I was actually just talking about in the Discord with some of the members. He has a really bad relative athletic score for a tight end. He ran a 4.84 40. Apparently he hurt himself during testing. He twisted his ankle running the 40. So that would explain his bad 40 time. And I guess it could explain some of his other scores if he was doing a lot of drills after that. He was pretty productive at Texas, especially considering the competition. He's got good size, like prototypical tight end size. I do not think that Gunnar Helm is going to be an elite tight end. I think he's much more in the like Cade Otton, Brenton Strange mold. And any success you can point to right now is largely going to be a factor of like, who else do the Titans have, right? It's just Ayomanor and DK and Gunnar Helm and Chigakonkwo. Like, it's not good competition. But his routes have been rising. 52% of routes this week. He had 7 targets, 6 catches. He led the team in targets, receptions. He had a 32% targets per out run. Still just 1.05 yards per out run. The situation is really bad. But, 11 expected points. He's a tight end that you want to roster. Like, he shouldn't be on waivers in your league unless it's really shallow, especially in tight end premium. And, he's a guy you can get thrown into deals and you can just kind of see what happens because he could at least develop. I think he's trending towards being kind of their full-time tight end because Chigakonkwo can't do everything. He can't block. He's much more of like an H-back type. Gunnar Helm can actually do everything. He can actually play in line and everything. So I think there's a decent chance he becomes their every down guy. And the competition could be lackluster again next year if we see Cam Ward improve. Like, it's not that hard to envision like a Jake Ferguson light type of season from him. So that's maybe not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is worth stashing in Dynasty when we have these deep benches. You don't want to hold a bunch of useless wide receiver 5s and, decrepit old players that are never going to play again. Like, you can drop Raheem Mostert and you can pick up Gunnar Helm if he's out there. All right, let's switch over to the faller side. I think I've rambled on long enough. And then we'll do questions at the end. On the fallers list, before you panic, I just put Lamar Jackson here because I want to talk about it. I just want to talk about it. Technically, he's a faller because I think I moved him down like 1 spot in the rankings. I moved him down to... Where did I move him down? To 5 in my rankings. I am not sending up the alarm on Lamar Jackson. He has put up 2 of the greatest fantasy football seasons for a quarterback we've ever seen in his career. One of them was last season. And he's clearly not healthy. I'm not going to buy into the idea that Lamar Jackson is washed, that he can't do it anymore. I think that's stupid. But from JJ Zacharyson, he has scored fewer than 10 standard fantasy points in 3 consecutive games. Prior to this season, in games where he had at least 20 pass attempts, he had only done that 3 times. So he just matched his previous career number of games like this in a 3-game stretch. It has been brutal. I think he's been like the QB 33 over the last month, which is insane considering there's only 32 teams. Like, he's basically been, right down to the purple uniforms, he's just been JJ McCarthy for 4 weeks. He's had, I pulled this stat, he's only scored 1 touchdown in his last 4 games. His last 16 quarters of football, he scored 1 touchdown. It has been absolutely painful. That being said, we need to have longer memories when it comes to elite players. We know what Lamar Jackson is. He's not right now, clearly not healthy. I don't know when this is going to get better. He did have some near misses on touchdown plays, like Isaiah Likely fumbled the ball into the end zone. Zay Flowers had an offensive pass interference on a touchdown. It's going to get better. I don't know how much better, but it's going to get better. If people are really, really panicking, this is the time to capitalize. Like, you want assets like this on your team. I put up a poll that was like, would you rather have, I think I did this poll, Lamar Jackson or Jackson Dart in Dynasty. And I think it was like 28% picked Jackson Dart. Now, some of those people are probably trolls and some of them were just mad about the game that was on, but it's not crazy to send out offers like that just to see. So, technically a faller. but I'm not that worried. Brian Thomas, on the other hand, has me very worried. I'm hoping that we get reports after the season that he's just been dealing with injuries, that he gets like wrist surgery or something, because oh my gosh, dude, how can things be so bad for Brian Thomas? He ran 84% of the routes in his first game back, and he got just a 12% target share. Even with Parker Washington going out, even with Travis Hunter being out, he's been at or below a 15% target share in each of his last 3 games. So yikes. You can keep starting him if you want as a flex play. You know, at this time of year, I feel like a lot of teams don't have the depth to even think about benching a player like that. Like I had to play Jawan Jennings in games, even though I thought it was supposed to be a blizzard, because my only other option was like John Mechie or Baishal Tootin, who I guess ended up scoring. But it's hard to bench, you know, your super expensive wide receivers. He's like a wide receiver, you know, 40 range type of guy for now, till we see something. I would speculate on buying if it's cheap enough, but I wouldn't send more than a single first for him. And I would not want to send like a 27 first. It would have to be like a 26 playoff first. I would consider buying low on Thomas, but anything less, I mean, anything more than that, I think is just probably unnecessary risk. Oronde Gadsden, I'm ping-ponging right now between panic and not panic. Oronde Gadsden is a faller because he's just slowed down so much from his early season pace. I'm not really that worried about Gadsden. He hasn't scored more than 6.1 PPR points in each of his last 3 games, according to JJ Zachariason. In the 4 before that, he was never under 11.8. In week 13, his 9.5% target share was his lowest since week 5, and the 68% route share was also his lowest outside of the game he got hurt. So I think one thing that's happening here is actually very real, which is Joe Alt is hurt. The Chargers cannot pass protect, and so they are playing Tucker Fisk a little bit more to help with that. He's picking up pass rush, and that's taking Gadsden off the field. That's happening. However, for most of the problem here, it's just that the passing game has been so lackluster over the last few weeks. In this game, Justin Herbert broke his hand in the first quarter, or like middle of the second quarter. So the passing game was just bad in general. Some of this is just going to be variance. I really don't have a lot of concern. Gadsden is a very good pass catcher. He's a very young player. The coaching staff loves him. He's literally not going to, he's 22. He's not even going to be 23 until next June. Very young guy. I think he can get better as a blocker. But more importantly, like when they get back next year, they're going to have Rashawn Slater. They're going to have Joe Alt. You have to hope they can actually pass protect, and then they can get back to what they want to do. They showed us what they wanted to do when the team was 100%. That was put Gadsden on the field for basically all of the routes. And you're going to see Keenan Allen gone. He's going to be backfilled with Trey Harris, but I don't see how much is going to change between this year and next year and that on that front. So I want to buy into Oronde Gadsden. I'd buy low. If somebody thinks, oh, you know, 5th round rookie, flash in the pan, now he's back down to earth, he's not actually all that, go buy. In a tight end premium league, I would happily send a late first. If you're a playoff team, tight end premium, I guess maybe he's not the guy you want to buy for your playoff run given the state of the Chargers offense, but just in general, if you have an extra late first lying around, I value him higher than that. Zay Flowers, kind of the same deal. I actually have them in the same tier. I'm not really panicked on Zay Flowers in the sense that I think he's not as good as I originally thought. I think he's fantastic. When your quarterback throws 1 touchdown in 16 quarters, your stats are going to suffer. He was 1 little push off away from a 50-yard touchdown last week. Instead, he finishes with negative 0.6 fantasy points. He hasn't lived up to the hopes I had for him in the first few weeks of the season. But again, he's played, 3 or 4 games with Cooper Rush / Tyler Huntley, and he's played 3 or 4 games with Lamar, JJ McCarthy, Jackson. So, you know, that's going to happen. Betting on Zay Flowers is just betting on a talented player on an offense that's going to improve. Is he going to be a wide receiver 1? Probably not. Probably not, because he's not on a team that's going to throw the ball enough for that. But he can't, there's no reason he can't get back to like the 15 16 points per game range if this team can just figure stuff out. So Zay Flowers, not as panicked. And we flip back over to the legitimate panic side with Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle got outsnapped in week 13. I think his Linsanity run is coming to an end. He had a couple weeks of lower level efficiency after coming out so hot. This week he got outsnapped 38-27 in favor of Chuba Hubbard. First time since week 8 that's happened. Hubbard had 20.4 PPR points. So basically what happened in this game, Rico came out and actually played the first drive. They both played the first drive. They've been mixing and matching. Chuba Hubbard scores a long touchdown. He genuinely just played better than Rico in this game. And I think where we are right now with Rico and Chuba Hubbard is they're basically just equal in the backfield. They are splitting. They're sharing the hot hand. But Chuba's going to get preference in passing situations. That's what we've seen. He's gotten more of these bubble screens. He's just going to get a little bit more deference in that department. And so Rico still has the chance to score some goal line touchdowns. This team is running the ball a ton. I think you can still flex Rico Dowdle. I don't think he's like a must bench. That was a tough matchup this week. But he's way, way down from where I had him because the thought was he had run away with this job and he was going to be like a low-end RB1 the rest of the season. That's no longer the case. And so now we're looking at a 27-year-old running back that's going to be a free agent. No guarantees that he's a starter on another team. I still think he's a pretty good player, but it's just there's only so many seats, you know? There's only so many spots for running backs. He is a free agent after the season. So he's a faller. He's kind of in that late second range for me now. I actually ranked him right next to Chuba Hubbard. I view them similarly. And like I said, you can start either one. They're just going to be a little bit volatile because the team is very willing to shift the game plan to one or the other, or shift the usage, I should say, to one or the other, depending on who's performing. Does it make sense to trade Olave for Ward? I would not trade Olave for Ward in a rebuild. I have those guys far enough apart that I don't think it makes sense. If you get a plus on top, like Ward in a second, I could see it. I'm sorry that your only other quarterback is JJ McCarthy. That is a rough scene. All right, a couple more followers here, and we'll wrap this up. Michael Pittman, he just hasn't seen the same type of usage over the last 5 weeks or so. And when you are a 28-year-old wide receiver, it very much is a what have you done for me lately, especially when you're not necessarily an elite player. You're just a good player. Alec Pierce is getting more involved in this offense. The passing game in general is taking a bit of a step back from the absurd efficiency early in the year. And so, he tumbles a little bit because he's not getting the massive target share. He's not scoring as many points. So Michael Pittman, whatever, slight faller, not a massive faller. I moved him down like half a tier. I still have him ahead of Alec Pierce. It's just the gap is getting closer. But he's in that mix in Dynasty with the likes of Troy Franklin, Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Jaden Higgins. Like, these are guys I have in a similar range. And speaking of Troy Franklin and Quentin Johnson, who are all in this tier, I don't really need to spend long on Troy Franklin. He was on the flip side of the Pat Bryant thing, and so is Cortland Sutton. He's been getting a lot of routes this year. He seems like he's having a year 2 breakout. I just want to throw a little bit of cold water on it. He did take a step back in routes this week. He did take a step back in targets. He's had issues with efficiency this year. He's not a perfect or complete wide receiver, and he does need some stuff to be manufactured for him. So don't get too far ahead of yourself with Troy Franklin that he's like this superstar in the making. I'm not burying him. I'm not saying he's dead because he had one bad game, but I would be comfortable cashing out on Franklin for an early second, and I think there are people that will give you that. And I feel similarly about Quentin Johnston, who I think got a touchdown in this game, if I remember correctly, but did not get a lot of targets. Nobody got a lot of targets in this game, but he had 3, which was less than Trey Harris. It was less than Keenan Allen. It was less than Ladd McConkey. 14% target share for QJ. He has had a pretty rough stretch ever since his beginning of the season run. And at this point, it's like, because we had a 2-year sample of QJ being so not just mediocre, but like actively bad, I'm really starting to wonder how real the beginning of the year was. And it's being compounded by the breakout of Gadsden, the passing game and the pass protection not holding up. He can't get into those downfield routes that he was succeeding on because they don't have time to throw them. So a lot of things are working against QJ, but I just don't have enough faith in him as a player to keep him elevated in the rankings. So he's just kind of been slowly like falling down and down and down for me. And this week I was like, yeah, he needs to be a faller. He needs to be moved down behind some of these other names that have been just more reliable, more productive. And then while we're on the subject of the Chargers, any concern with Ladd? I mean, not a ton of concern, just because I think he's a much better player. Like, he had a 28.6% target share this week. There just wasn't a lot of volume to go around, but he is like legitimately that good, and he can do everything. He gets the touchdown here. He runs the most routes on the team. So not really as concerned. I mean, the upper level ceiling is probably not as high as I thought it was going to be to start the year, but no, I'm not worried about him based on recent production. And then Cortland Sutton, like I said, has been struggling. Let me just pull this up if I can get it to load. If I pull up his splits by week, it's been kind of crazy to see what he's been doing this year. If you look at the most recent stretch of games, right, so going backwards, target shares by week, 13%, 15.8, 14.3, 16.2. In week 8, he had a 20% target share. Before that, 18%, 10%. So he's had one game over his last 7 where he hit a 20% target share. We're looking at 6 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets, 3 targets. Like, he just isn't that guy right now. And when you're 30 years old and you start to not look like that guy, there's a good chance you just aren't that guy anymore, unfortunately. We're looking at 10 fantasy points, 17 this past week because he got in the end zone, 9.9, 5.4, 10.0, 10.7, 16, 2.7, 17. He started the season on a very hot stretch, and it's really cooled off. You see Pat Bryant usage increase. You see Troy Franklin increase. I would like to get out early on Sutton. I mean, getting out 6 weeks ago would have been better, but now I think you can still get out, especially after a decent game. I think we're seeing a downward trend, and when it comes to these like bigger bodied receivers, I'm just worried. Like, he's been so awesome as this X receiver, but it's a very hard position to play. And if you become physically diminished at all as a bigger bodied receiver that needs to be, boxing guys out, winning these routes on the outside, one-on-one man coverage, I just don't know how consistently he's going to be able to do that anymore. So he's not in any second territory for me yet, but he's approaching that. And certainly if I wasn't competing right now, if somebody's going to give me a 2027 second, I would take that. Abs Bread says, is it possible QJ's role depends on the line holding out for plays to develop? Yeah, I think I said something similar. I would imagine that since Alt has been out, or in the stretches of games this year that Alt has been out, Herbert's had to throw the ball faster. He hasn't been able to get to deeper routes. I'm sure if someone looked into that, that would be the case. And so QJ's probably better than his numbers have been over the last month. But I have him ranked that way. If I was just going off his numbers for the past month, I mean, he's useless, right? He just hasn't been there. So we're still giving him some credit for the early season stuff, just not full credit. So those are the risers and fallers. That's the end of all I've got for you guys. I haven't seen a ton of activity in the chat, so maybe you guys are all asleep. Maybe nobody watches this show anymore. Appreciate you guys that are here. Parker, I'm sorry you feel this way. I did not mean any offense to Mr. Cortland Sutton. I like him as a player. I just trying to call it like I see it. It seems like the beginning of a downward trend that I would rather not see the end of while he's on my Dynasty team. So, all right. We got one more game. I'm just going to let you guys know I need as many points as humanly possible from Trevion Henderson and Hunter Henry to potentially save my chances at a bye week. I have a very weird league that starts playoffs in week 14. And if I don't get the bye week, I'm going to have to play next week with Henderson on bye, Drake May on bye, Hunter Henry, Jawan Jennings, plus Amon-Ra St. Brown out with an injury most likely. So I really don't want to play in that matchup next week. Hoping I can get enough points. I'm not sure that I'm going to, but let's go for another 3 touchdown game from Trevion Henderson. So, all right, guys, good luck. Hope you win your matchups. I'll be back later this week with another video. Like, subscribe, join the Discord. I'll see you later.